It's not to be like the world, and not to be like the great majority of American Christians, but to be like Jesus Christ. I don't know why you're clapping. I'm talking about you.
What's wrong with you people? I'm serious.
These are the important moments for people to understand why this is dangerous. Because we can just say, hey, they're teaching some heretical stuff. And all they have to do is say, well, that's just one of our churches. We have lots of churches and we can't be held accountable to one. Yeah. So the important thing is to see that this is systemic. This is the way a leader, a pastor, is shepherding his flock.
You can't say amen. You ought to say ouch.
Hello, humblebees. Welcome to Tulips and Honey.
Hi, humblebees. Welcome back to Tulips and Honey. I am your host, Lauren Hereford, and today I am, of course, once again joined by Kristin Everett. And Kristin, we have a problem today.
We do.
I don't know what's happening with the technology, but apparently Satan doesn't want us to do this video because
that's what we're going with.
Yeah. There's some weird technology glitch. So we're going to be going in and out of view, like disappearing, like ta-da. And now I'm back because for whatever reason, the microphone's magic today and it's disappearing, everybody. And you can't even see it, but it's actually right here. So if you're listening to this, which of course most of my audience is listening instead of watching, thank goodness, you won't see any of these weird glitches and it won't matter to you at all. But for anybody watching over on YouTube, you guys are going to be seeing some really weird stuff. And I don't know why this is happening because I just went live a couple of hours ago and I didn't have a single problem with it. So this is just one of those weird things that's happening, but we're just gonna press on because we've just tried to work on this for like 40 minutes, and no matter what we did or how hard we tried, it just keeps on happening. So next time, I'm just gonna message Patrick White right away and say, Patrick, there's something wrong, and he'll tell me how to fix it because he's the only person that I know that knows how to fix things. So we left off, actually, if you're watching this Monday, then last Monday's episode, Lord willing, was the first part of this. And we're gonna hopefully finish it up today, but if not, I'll just bribe your husband into letting me borrow you again because you have 5 children. And so you're coming over here and doing this recording probably is fun for your husband.
Amazing for me. And he is a saint, so
I'll just
he really
bribe
loves
him.
that I do this.
Good, very good. I'll definitely bribe him if I need to, but hopefully we can finish it up this time so that you don't have to keep disappearing into my green screen. But we left off talking about where your church here, which we're not going to mention the exact church, but we talked about ARC, the Association of Related Churches, and how you were actually in one of those churches. Now, just to recap for you guys listening, it wasn't a church plant, but it was here and it became a member, right? It was here already and then they joined up.
We actually were a church plant.
Oh, you were the church plant. Okay, yeah. Okay.
There's other ones in the area, though, that were already established churches, and so they became affiliates.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, but ours was an actual plant. We were a mobile church for a number of years, and then there was a dying church, of course, so to speak. You know what they say about churches who are biblical, they die.
Right.
Who had met our pastor and they got along really well, and then they decided that they were going to merge churches. They had already established an established building, and they were going to come under the ARC banner. We would just be taking over. They described it as a merger. It was a takeover. It was a total just
it's all them. Wow.
ARC, so.
What did they do with the pastor of that other one? Did he become like an elder, or
he was there for a while? I think he spoke a handful of times, and then all of a sudden I stopped seeing him. Like he just stopped going. I know he technically, I think technically he still does attend occasionally.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
But I never got to know him. I never really spoke to him very much. I know a lot of the members actually did end up leaving. There was a decent amount that stayed, but a good amount of the members I know ended up
heading out to a different place. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of a weird situation to have it merged like that. But it's here in this town with associate. So it was planted by ARC. Of course, we talked last time about the finances ARC gives. So they give money to a new church, and then that church has all these funds. They can set it up really, really nice, be actually quite competitive in any given city. So you were actually involved in the ministry of a different church, and they recruited you to theirs. We talked a little bit about the sort of worldliness of their clothing, how they made you dress trendy, and we got into a little bit of that sort of subject, but really we kind of left off with what happened, like right where you left. So you were researching all these things, you realized that you were not being taught properly. How did they respond to your bringing this to their attention when you realized that this was false? Kind of walk us through what that was like and how you reacted, and then how they reacted.
Sure. Initially, my first thought was, because I was mainly involved, my husband wasn't really involved in the church. I decided that it was going to be me who met with the worship pastor. I was really close to him, and I felt like this was a conversation that I could have with him. I knew that we were going to leave, and that was going to be the end result. But I tried to make it as soft, I think, as possible, and that's something that I wish I wouldn't have done. I wish I would have came a little bit more sure of myself. When I walked in, the emotions that I felt sitting there knowing that I was about to tell him why I was leaving and that was our decision, I just became like overwhelmed with emotions. I just started crying like immediately. I choked out probably half of the letter that I had written, and then he accused me of doing all of this research without letting anybody from the church have any influence on what I was pouring into myself. Pretty much like, how could you do this behind our backs kind of an attitude.
Wow.
I was really emotional and kind of confused. I asked him why he said that. I said, I've been trying to get answers from you guys, and you guys don't teach anything.
Right.
So I'm not getting any answers here. And he said, you know what, if you wanted meat, you needed to feed yourself. You don't need to get meat from us.
Wow. Because you had actually asked to speak with the pastor, right?
I did. I put in a request. They were really busy. And so I had wanted to meet with my worship pastor anyway, so I just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
And then after he said that, I got kind of angry.
Yeah.
I was pretty upset. And I said, we're leaving. And I gave him another document that I had put together about Bethel and Hillsong and Elevation, and a little bit about Church of the Highlands. I didn't really hit very hard on them, just kind of explaining their theology and how it was heretical and how I couldn't support their music. And that was part of the reason why he did not like that. Judgmental is pretty much the response I got to all of that.
How do we respond to that then? Because that is something that we hear quite a bit. If you can go back in time and say the exact right thing, you're telling them, listen, this is supporting something, not just financially, but also with, by singing it, we're showing that we support this group whenever they're heretical. Oh, you're just being judgmental. What is the response biblically that we should be giving back to somebody that says that? Because it's frequent that we hear that.
It is. I mean, we're warned not to yoke ourselves with false teachers. And how can we in good conscience stand there and sing these songs and praise to these songs that are written in heretical churches? It's a different Jesus, ultimately, is what they're writing these to. And I mean, you could say, yeah, well, I'm singing it to God, so he knows my heart. And I hear that all the time. He knows my heart.
Yeah, it's deceitful.
It
above
is.
all other things. So
your heart is wicked.
That should definitely make you tremble. So
I know it does for me. And I haven't listened to one of their songs since, because it's just an overwhelming sense of this is wrong.
Yeah.
We know what they teach.
Right.
They're not secretive about it at all. They're very out front and open. It's just right there.
They're
for
proud.
everybody
Yeah.
to see.
Well, I mean, they believe what they believe, and I'm thankful for that. It's actually one of the things that I have a lot more respect for. Whereas there are some people who will sort of hide it or sugarcoat it, and it just shows that they really don't actually believe what they believe, or they know that it's so out there that people are going to push back. But if we know that something is false, Bible tells us clearly what we're supposed to do about that. We have to point it out. We have to make sure that we aren't giving the illusion that we're siding with these falsehoods. We're supposed to judge. The Bible tells us to judge righteously.
Right.
So if we're not getting any meat and we're being told to get the meat ourselves, but then hypocritically also being told you shouldn't be looking for these things on your own, that can be really confusing. Get your own meat.
Yeah.
But also don't research on your own. Now, that's concerning to me that you said that. And is this something that you've heard repeated? Is that
No, that was the first time I've ever heard that before.
Wow, because the cults say that. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're not supposed to study the word by yourself.
Right. Well, I'd never heard not to study it by myself. I mean, but hearing it the way that he said that, it was really hurtful because I've been asking questions for a while, and I'd been asking specifically for was a mentor. I had met with the pastor's wife a few weeks prior and just like poured my heart out and was just like, I need an older woman to mentor me. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And she just was like, well, sorry. Like,
wow.
I mean, she tried to give me like advice about it, about like what I could do myself. But ultimately she was like, go find somebody, was kind of her answer.
Wow.
I didn't know where to look. I didn't know what to do. And I needed her help. I needed her help.
Yeah. Right. Like,
that
is literally the job of older women in the church.
Yeah.
Is to be teaching the younger women in the church.
And the older women too, in our church specifically, I had heard from a number of them before about how out of place they felt at our church.
Oh, yeah.
My mom specifically would ask me all the time, like, I wonder if other older people feel like this. Like, I feel like they don't really want me here. Like, I feel like I'm overlooked, or I feel like I'm too old for this crowd. They don't care about us, kind of stuff. And that was, at the beginning, I felt guilty because at the beginning I was just like, yeah, of course, we don't want old people here. Like, we're young, we're hip, we're cool, we want to reach the young people. But now coming out of it, like, my heart just hurts for those women in that church.
Yeah.
And churches like it, because we need older women to pour into us. We need the Titus 2 women who will pour into us and help us learn to walk in the ways of God.
Yeah.
And mother and be wives and
right, like those two things all on their own. Yeah. It's almost impossible. I mean, it's not impossible, but it is incredibly difficult to do without anybody to say, this is the mistakes that you need to avoid. Here's the pitfalls. Here's some help and things of that nature. Susan Heck has been a tremendous blessing. So they said that you weren't going to them, or your music leader indicated that you should have gone to him, but you did. You went to the pastor's wife. You did tell her that there were concerns. You did try to meet with the pastor. It's a strange thing for them to say that you should be doing this on your own, but then saying that you can't do it on your own without falling out of their spiritual protection.
Yes.
So it's almost like they are speaking from both ends, because it's clear and obvious why they didn't want you to have an older woman helping you, because they didn't want older women to be encouraged to be there.
That's honestly what I think.
Yeah. I think there's actually been studies done to show the fact that in a lot of these modern churches, these like people-pleasing type of movements, that elderly people are feeling like they don't belong, they shouldn't be there. It's a shame, because they're shooting themselves in the foot, right? Yeah. Because not only are elderly people biblically necessary, of course, to teach us, but they are more financially responsible. So they're going to be, better at, I don't know, a little thing called tithing. Yep. And they're better at showing up every single week. So one of the great things about a church with a wide range of ages is that your older men and women will show up. They will be there consistently, and they're going to always be a lot further along financially than, say, I don't know, a really dumb millennial who got herself in a lot of student loan debt without ever, achieving an actual degree in anything. Not that I'm talking about.
Are you talking about me?
I'm talking about me. Was that describing you?
Totally.
Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, no.
I have a degree in nothing.
I learned a lot though about what not to do. Our generation is going to be the only generation that tells their kids not to go to college.
Right.
I've already told her, like, you can, junior college is great.
Right.
We pay junior college.
Go to trade school.
Yeah,
It's like,
trade
just
school. There you go.
told my girls they need to be wives. Just be
Yeah.
wives. Just don't worry about
There
it.
you go. Don't even worry about it. That's way better than having to go get in debt. I wish somebody had told me
I
that.
want great kids.
Yes. By the way, the job that I had all the way up until I got to quit working, I didn't need a degree for, so it was all pointless. And I'm just saying. But our older people aren't going to have that problem, and they're going to be able to hold you more accountable.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the main reason why these younger, hipper dudes, they don't want that in their church, because that accountability from elderly people, like they have been in scripture longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
That's accountability that a lot of these guys don't want, because they aren't teaching right. So it makes a lot of sense to me that at the same time that they're being this manipulative, that they're also saying, hey, we really don't need elderly people here. But it is incredibly sad that they must have been doing something if your mom felt that way from the start. Like, there had to have been some way that they were making them feel sectioned off. Like,
yeah, and my mom was always very involved in the church, so was my dad. I just think that they seek out the younger generation to be more in the spotlight. So like on the stage, doing announcements, being not necessarily small group leaders, because they encouraged everybody to do that, but the faces, I guess you could say. Because there was a lot of people like 40s to 60s who would serve the church in like capacities of like janitor, like cleaning the church.
Wow.
They cleaned that church and they were dedicated. And so it's not like they were there. They were there, but the ones that I talked to always felt not appreciated. You know? So like, I don't know. And I do feel bad that I never really dug into like why they felt that way.
Right.
But from what I observe, I'm pretty sure it's just because they were never asked to do anything that was more than just
cleaning,
the bare minimum, like cleaning or running a small group or.
And there's that inner circle.
That
that the pastor will have. And I was thinking about this since the last time. I was thinking about the last church that I was in that was similar to what you were describing. I remember feeling like the oddball when we would go. Justin and I tried really hard to serve and do different things. And I remember him just telling me, like, these leaders are actually just rude when you get behind closed doors. And I hadn't thought about this until we had this conversation. It came back to me. But they were young leaders, and they had their inner circle, and there was no one that was going to get outside of that inner circle. And I can remember one time where I was having a conversation with the pastor's wife, and she just turned directly around and walked away in the middle of my sentence. And it's little things like that at the time I just thought, well, she's busy. She's got a lot on her mind. She probably didn't even realize, that I was talking. But on the outside looking in, you're like, wait a minute, there's deliberate stuff happening because they have their inner circle and they can't break away from that. And I'm sure that for somebody who is serving, cleaning the toilets, mowing the lawn, to be ignored by that inner circle is very discouraging, especially when you just want fellowship. It's not about the credit. A lot of these folks that are 60s, they don't care about that because they've got like 15 grandkids. They're getting lots of, love and affection at that point, but all they want is to fellowship. We all want to go to service, to fellowship. That's really one of the most amazing blessings. We hear God's word. We get to sing together, not here in Washington, but this is really helpful to get an image of what's going on behind the scenes, because it's an institutionalized idea here that we see happening. It's got to come from somewhere. I don't know if the leadership is telling them how to do this or if they're just watching and learning through example. But if it's happening in multiple churches, which we know it is now because we've actually heard from other people, then we know that there's some way that they're figuring out how to do this, how to make this all work without being blatant. But with you, they were kind of blatant. So walk us through what happens after you get done with the music leader.
I left feeling pretty defeated. I knew that it was the end. I knew we were not going to be going back. And we didn't talk to anybody. Nobody called for like a month after that.
And you guys were, I mean, you were deeply involved. So
I was
this
very
was,
involved.
yes, they noticed your absence,
Mhm.
and you had been talking about things. So
Mhm.
this wasn't like, oh, they're not calling because they just didn't notice. Maybe you're sick. No, they
Right.
knew there was something going on, and
Mhm.
they didn't, it wasn't a concern for them to actually contact you.
Right. Um,
Until.
my husband, love him very much. He is a wonderful man, like wonderful man of God. And he listened in on a sermon one Sunday. They had their youth pastor, who's a female, like 20-something-year-old female, preaching on Sunday morning.
Wow. And that's totally biblical, right?
Like it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It just like I remember it's like total squirrel, but like my daughter would come home from youth group sometimes and just be like, I think that the youth pastor hates me.
Oh,
Like,
that's awful.
Because she did the same thing. Like she would focus on certain girls who were the daughters of the ones in charge, and then the ones that they wanted to get involved more.
Mhm.
And then like she always felt like she was just pushed to the side, and she was made to feel really bad a couple of times over some girls and the drama and stuff that would happen in youth group.
Should not have
'Cause it's youth group.
happened in
Well,
churches. Like
and-
there has to be some sort
there's
of
gonna be
maturity.
and there's gonna be stuff that happens in the youth, but how you handle it is very important.
Yeah, if you're 20, then you're
You're not gonna
probably
handle it very well.
you've never raised teenagers,
Mm-mm.
then you shouldn't probably be the person doing this.
No, I was uncomfortable with it, but I put it aside. Anyway, so she was preaching on Sunday morning, and my husband, he decided to listen. I was having a lot of questions about whether or not leaving was correct. I was like a wreck about it. And so he was listening, and I don't remember. I didn't listen. I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't handle it. But apparently he was hearing some pretty heretical stuff. And so he started commenting on the live stream. And he was like, that's not in the Bible. That's not what the Bible says. And then he would provide verses that would completely contradict what she was saying. And at the time I was so mad at him. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're stirring the pot. Like, I don't want this for us.
Don't stir the beef.
It was embarrassed. Like, I was embarrassed too, because I was just like, I just got chewed out by the worship pastor for being like this divisive, person, and being rebellious against leadership and everything. And so like, I just didn't want him to do anything like that. But he did. And then the main pastor ended up messaging my mom.
Your mom, but not you.
Not me, not him, but my mom, and saying, hey, what's going on with Kristin and Adam? I don't remember exactly what it said. She sent it to me, but I don't exactly remember. And my mom straight up said, if you want information, talk to her.
Yeah.
And so he texted me, and he wanted to meet with just me. And I said, nope, Adam and I will come and meet with you, because I was not going to put myself in that situation again.
Right. Well, he should want the leader of your family there as a pastor. He should understand.
They undermined Adam a lot. And I think a lot of it was because, number one, when we tithed, we did not put our name on anything. We just put money in. So there was no paper trail for Adam or me at that point.
Right.
But number two, because I was involved and he was not.
Right.
And he did not serve them. So they did not serve him. Not that they served anybody anyway, but specifically, if you did not serve, you got nothing in return.
Wow.
And so they already didn't like him a whole lot. There were also issues before that happened that were terrible, terrible issues, but I'm pretty sure they already just decided they didn't like him.
Right. Yeah.
But I told him, I said, no, I said, it has to be both of us. And so he said, okay.
And thank goodness you did.
Oh,
because of when you first told me this story, I nearly had to pull over because we were driving to Pastor Osmond's church. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. This is not supposed to happen in evangelical churches. But so he calls you guys in there. This is how much time has passed here at this point?
Just about a month.
Just about a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got yourself a letter written at this point. You've written it all down. And I would recommend that to anyone dealing with this. Write it down. So walk us through that meeting and how that went.
When we walked in, sat down, it was cordial at the beginning. They expressed that they wanted to know what had happened, and I had said that I wanted to read them a letter. But the first thing that we did was we wanted to get the gospel straight. So they had us explain what the gospel was, and then vice versa. They also would say things here and there. Everything lined up. Everything was fine. Nothing heretical. And then I asked again if I could read my letter, and they said they specifically did not want to talk about my letter, but they wanted to talk about who had hurt me.
But you guys, you leave this meeting, everybody splits.
Mm-hmm.
They know that you're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know that you're not going to come back.
Yeah.
But they don't stop there, because it's not enough that they've humiliated you,
right,
and basically cut you off from their lives. They keep going with it. So what happens after that meeting?
So our car was vandalized. We had a sticker on the back of our car. Somebody came and ripped it off. I mean, Adam calls it vandalism because he's extreme about it. They ripped the sticker off our car. So no, they didn't like bash our windows or anything, but they touched our property just to make sure that we knew we were not a part of their church anymore.
So was it their sticker?
It was a sticker for the church.
So they specifically came to where you live.
It could have been where we live. It could have been at a grocery store. I have no idea. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, I need to take that sticker off. Mm-hmm. Like we'd been gone still. Like we'd been gone another month after that point, you know? Wow. So like, and I'm forgetful.
Yeah.
It's just a sticker on the back of my car. So I just would always forget. And one morning I was like, I need to go take that off. Like a bunch of other stuff was happening. And I went out there and I realized it was gone.
Wow.
And I was like, Adam, did you take the sticker off our car? And he's like, no. I talked to my kids. I asked them. They're like, no, we didn't touch any sticker on the car. And at that point, it was just like,
crazy.
Okay, yeah, well.
So they came and just took a sticker. I mean, that is vandalized. Yeah. I mean, you can't touch somebody else's stuff.
You can't.
You can't.
And I don't know who did it. I don't know why they did it. I don't know I don't know. I just know that it was there and then it was gone. We didn't take it off. So then after that, we found out that the pastor had called a couple of churches to let them know that if I were to show up on Sunday, that I was somebody who would bring division to their church, that I held heretical beliefs. They should not let me attend their church. And if they did, they needed to be warned about me. That was really hurtful. I didn't know what to say about it.
Right. Yeah, that's really intense. You're going to go so far.
Yeah.
Because they at no point did they actually offer you scriptural defense of their positions. Right. There was no biblically saying, "Hey, this is why we believe what we believe in the Bible. Here's where we get this from Scripture." But to decide then, without actually showing you that you were wrong scripturally, to go ahead and call other people and tell them that you're a heretic, is that is incredible that a church would be willing to do that. We don't know how many churches they called ahead of time. I'm sure at least all the other ARC churches were called, because there's several in our.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, several in this area.
Yeah.
So they've now taken their sticker off. They've called all these other places. Mm-hmm. You've been made a pariah, right? They're not they're not talking with you. Their children are being kept away from your children.
Yeah, and if I would make a post that was even slightly in disagreement with anything that they taught, I had people commenting on my posts on Facebook to tell me how wrong I was. I would get private messages from people telling me how wrong I was.
Is it ever the leaders, like the pastor?
It was never the leaders. It was always the people that I've been friends with for years, like really good friends with, would just all of a sudden just go off on me. A lot of them just unfriended me immediately. Some of them stuck around, I think, to watch me and to
take stickers off. Take stickers off your car.
Take stickers on my car.
How did they find out then? Because this wasn't something that was like publicly happening in front of everybody, right? And you weren't going from person to person.
No, I was not.
So at some point, the leaders had to have let folks know.
Yes.
That this was the situation.
So I know that there was an email sent to the group of women that I was leading. They pretty much said that I just held with different doctrines. They said my prayer life was different, which was a weird thing to say. And I think that comes because after I met with them, I had talked with one other of the leaders, the girl that recruited me.
Okay.
And we had spoke, And I told her I didn't believe that speaking things into existence was biblical.
So they've sent an email where it gets around really well whenever
yes.
you have a group of women.
Yes.
Was there anybody left that was, because this isn't a small church.
No.
It's not like we're talking about a couple, a dozen,
Mm-hmm.
families or anything. Like, we're talking about quite a large church.
I'd say about 2,000.
That's a lot of people to just completely, all of a sudden, bam, nobody is talking to you.
Yeah.
And your children, of course, are ostracized. Mm-hmm. You're apparently now the town heretic. They're comfortable taking things off of your car. So was there anybody left that was comfortable still talking with you?
Yeah, for a little while. Because right before I left, I had made really good friends with a couple of women in particular. And I had been very honest with them about my findings of ARC, about the teachings and like how they taught, right? About like the motivational speeches, how it was always topical, how they weren't going through scripture, just all that kind of stuff that I was feeling worried about. So I was very honest with them. And the sad thing is they agreed with a lot of it, and they had agreed with a lot of it. And so after I left, they still talked to me. One of them was a little bit more vocal about how she didn't agree with how my husband handled some things with like the commenting and stuff. And I could see how some people could have a problem with that. I don't anymore. I did at the time. But even at that point, I defended him because I was like, no, like,
right. Address the argument.
You have to say something.
Yeah. It's weird how people never want to talk about the argumentation.
No.
They're like, oh, well, how you did it is wrong. Right. No. I don't care about how I did it. We can talk about that later. But first tell me what's wrong about what I said. Right. Like, give me your response back, because what I'd love more than anything else is to have an intelligent discussion about these kind of things. Like, wouldn't that be really nice if we could all just actually have intelligent discussions? And for some, for some of the groups, we actually can. There's a lot of cessation continuationist debates that happen that are quite cordial, but that's not what happened for you guys. So they weren't responding to the actual argumentations, but at least they were still talking to you.
Yeah.
How long does that last? Where is the explanation for this? Are these ladies telling you, hey, this is what's being said? Or is it just sort of going like without being said? They're just sort of acting like everything is weird but normal.
Yeah, there wasn't really a whole, they felt like I was wrong because they were under the impression that our pastor like told the gospel regularly. And one of our arguments was he never preaches the gospel. Wow. Ever. I would hear it maybe 2 times a year, Easter and Christmas, and not even the full gospel. Just like, wow. Oh yeah. Kind of like an afterthought almost. It just was never there. It was nothing that was ever expounded upon, like to the point where like I had never heard the gospel before I watched American Gospel. I had never heard the whole gospel until I watched American Gospel. Ever. And this was one of the things that I was trying to like explain to them. Like, this is dangerous. We are bringing people into this church and they're not even hearing why we are Christians. Right. All they're hearing is, hey, serve your community by helping us and being involved with what we're doing here. Right. And you're getting people involved. And so it's hard for people to see them as being sneaky because they're doing all these good things out in the community. Right. So it's like brilliant, actually. How can I judge this place that is serving the police officers in our city, that is serving the schools in our city, that is serving the homeless, that is serving, because we know them by their fruits, right? Right. But the thing about it is that the Mormons do that too. You can have good fruits, but your roots are still rotten. Right, yeah. But there's actually a selfish reason to be doing those things. So, what does the Bible say about what those who reap their rewards on earth are not going to reap their rewards in heaven? Yes, that's right. It was never Jesus that was promoted. It was always their name. Right. So it was always this church that was doing it. This church did this. This church did that. This church, never about God, never about the gospel, never about why are we doing this? Right. Where's the glory going? It's going straight to the leaders of the church. Really concerning anytime we see people stealing the glory from God, because the only person that actually deserves that glory is God. And it really frightens me, actually, to see anybody take his glory
it's clear and obvious when people are keeping the glory for themselves, because that is why the gospel isn't being taught. Right. If you tell people about what you've been given freely, all of the stuff you're doing, it's nothing. It's not even a drop in a bucket to what God has done. Right. So you can go out and do and serve every single day for the rest of your life and never ever think about yourself and be completely selfless, and you're still not going to even come close to earning what we've already been given. And so it makes a lot of sense from that perspective if they want to keep that glory, not to explain why Christ is actually the one that deserves the glory. But if you're in a church like this, because they are quite connected with Stephen Furtick, that's saying we're mostly for lost people, you would think that there would be a concern about sharing the gospel. If you're just hearing it twice a year and only barely then, you're going to have a lot of confused goats that are there because they are trying to earn their way. The reason this is so dangerous is because for folks like me, when I was a false convert, that's what I was looking for. I needed to feel like I was okay, right, because there was conviction happening and under the surface. So if I could just do enough work, I could go to bed at night and not feel too terribly wrong. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I needed some work to do. And that's what these places provide. They provide a place for people who need a religion but don't want to give up their sin. They provide a place for them to go and really glory in themselves. So,
and I saw a lot of that too inside the church, a lot of like blatant sin. So I walked in on like a couple of our main leaders like hooking up in the back once, that unmarried, just dating, like people smoking weed in the parking lots. Like I saw.
When you say hooking up,
oh, I mean sex.
Oh, in church?
In the church. Yeah.
In the church.
Yes.
Was that addressed? Like,
oh, I brought it up and they just, no.
There was no addressing it with, and these are leaders, not just regular folks. No. Not that would be okay, because it's not. It's not
either way. But there should be more repercussions, definitely. And honestly, like there was so many issues, like morally. Like one of my greatest friends there, like was having issues, and it was like matter of life and death. And I told her I had to bring it to the leaders if she didn't, and she said, no, I'll never talk to you again if you tell them. And I ended up saying, like, I have to, because you won't. And they listened to me at first, and then the next weekend they brought me in and reprimanded me because I handled it incorrectly. But she was one of the main people, so how dare I try to bring her down? I'm obviously jealous. I'm obviously, so like you feel like you are going crazy because
manipulative tactics. Wow.
You're just like, I'm trying, like you're trying so hard, and I know it's just not me. I keep saying I know there's so many people that feel like this.
Yeah.
Like I am trying so hard to please you because that's obviously what I have to do,
right,
to earn God's favor. And that's kind of how they play it. Like if you please us, you please God. So like the whole we're your spiritual covering stuff that they pulled with me. And if you remove yourself from our spiritual covering, then you're in trouble. You better watch out,
because you could get demons.
Oh, you could, a whole bunch of stuff could go wrong. But like that's why people aren't speaking out. That's why people are like feeling the way that I was feeling. Like they're going crazy. Like why am I not godly enough?
Right.
Why won't God speak to me? Why can't I get promoted on worship team? Why are they not asking me to lead? It's vicious cycle.
It is, yeah. And it's designed that way. You can see it. If they're finding a way to manipulate everybody there, then they can control you. They can control your behavior. They can get more out of you. You're going to tithe more. You're going to work harder. I can remember, this is slightly connected because we just found out that they were bought by the Church of God, or they
were
taken
over on as their church planting arm, is what they described them as in 2017.
Wow. So Church of God actually is the church that I got married in. So really interesting to find this out. We ended up meeting through the Church of God, my husband and I, because my grandma was going to a Church of God. Now, she did like you did. She tithed without putting her name on it because she didn't want to let her left hand know what her right hand was doing. So there was a very small congregation in this particular church, maybe like 15 people total. It's in an extremely impoverished town in Texas. And my grandmother was so poor that once she died, she had 3 things of value: her only pair of pearl earrings, her wedding ring, and the Bible that she owned, the only Bible that she owned. I called her Graham Cracker. She was the best. She was the cutest little 70-pound adorable lady in the world. But the pastor gets up and week after week after week condemns the church because somebody in the church is not tithing. And she's been tithing, but she hasn't been putting her name on it. And so it made her physically sick that she had let this man down. So you got this impoverished town, this teeny tiny church, but this family is living in a massive house with very nice cars. And the people in this congregation are all as poor as my grandmother. She clipped coupons to be able to eat. She was so poor. We lived in these little nasty trailers. I grew up a trailer rat, and there was holes in the floor of these trailers. It was just not good conditions. And she lived like that her whole life. She died poor. And this is the way the Church of God treats people. And so when we found out that the Church of God was taking ARC under their arm, that makes perfect sense. So my husband and I got married in a Church of God. And in that church, similar situation, a little bit wealthier of a town, a little nicer of a town, but the pastor wasn't living in the house provided for him. It wasn't nice enough. He made sure to go get his own big fancy house. When he left, because he had to, because there was tax issues that ended up happening, they found the computer that he was paying everybody in his family.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody was getting paid in the actual church. If you were working the kids stuff, this sweet, wonderful woman that was working the kids, she did this for years and years and years. She worked her butt off. She created the curriculum. She wasn't getting paid anything, but his children and wife were, and they weren't actually doing the work. And so we found all this out. This all happened under the Church of God. And of course, because, the Bible tells us what a pastor should be and shouldn't be. Yep. He made sure to wait 2 years before he preached somewhere else. So it fits perfectly with what I learned about ARC, about how they just sort of, they dust you off when you mess up as a pastor, and then they put you somewhere else and you're allowed to keep on preaching. And that causes a lot of pain and suffering. And there's so many atheists today that were hurt in churches, and they are so hardened to the truth of God's word, not because of anybody actually preaching the genuine gospel, but because of folks doing stuff like this. So now the Church of God is, or I guess since 2017, you said the Church of God has been over that. That makes perfect sense to me. You've been ostracized.
Yes.
When you are now looking back, because this is sort of the end of the story, right? This is where you're at now.
Yes.
Fast forward to today, where you're not actually talking to anybody now.
I'm not. I think there's maybe one woman who will like family posts every now and again.
This is the lady that you dropped the book off for.
Yes, she's so sweet, and I love her so much. And that's the hardest thing.
Because they're hurting on the inside.
I know exactly how
they made an example of you.
Yeah, they did. 100%.
So why would anybody else want to stand up to that?
No, you don't want to. I've had a couple of people come to me after leaving, which has been such a blessing. And they have the exact same feelings and fears, and they witnessed a lot of the same stuff.
Which tells us it's institutionalized. It's by design.
Because you feel crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You feel really crazy when you leave. You feel like, oh my gosh, did I just imagine these things? Obviously, I'm just not blessed enough to understand. Obviously, I'm not gifted enough to be used. Obviously, it's me. Right. It's my fault. I'm the problem. I'm the one who is the screw up,
Right.
But a couple of people did end up coming to me and saying that they were leaving, and asking me for advice and what I saw and why I left. And that was really encouraging. I know.
Praise God. That's just wonderful to hear.
Amazing. And
it's not good for them, because this is going to be hard.
I know exactly what they're going
to be really, really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But praise God that this is actually the problem whenever they make an example of somebody. Mm-hmm. They made an example of you. What do? They show that, look, you're still here. Your family is still together. You guys are going to a different church now. You're still on social media. You didn't run and hide. You've gotten more bold.
I'm sitting here in front of a screen knowing that I'm going to get my butt handed to me in the next month. But I don't want people to feel like they're alone.
Yeah.
Like, I remember like searching and searching and searching. And, you know, there's Doreen, and she was wonderful and she was so helpful to me. And Melissa and Lindsay Davis's interview that she did with Cultish. And then obviously American Gospel is what really opened my eyes. But those people's testimonies and their stories, they helped me. But the language was always like slightly different than what I experienced. And so I was always like, so close, you know, like it's so close, but we do this though. And so there was that doubt that was instilled because it wasn't exactly like Bethel or exactly like Elevation or whatever.
Because Ark is its own monster.
It is. It's its own beast. And I think that it's one of the most dangerous ones out there right now.
Yeah.
Not right now, just because they've been around for about 20 years now, but they're very dangerous.
Yeah, they're getting bigger. They're not slowing down.
They're planting churches by the hundreds.
And this is a Ponzi scheme. Like, this is a triangle. What do they call that?
MLM, multi-level marketing.
Exactly. Yeah. The important thing is the theology. But in the background, not to be confused, is that this is something that if it was any other organization, we would all be saying this is a scam.
Yeah.
Because you're paying fees. And just not even a scam, but if you've ever been asked to sell things, this is what they do. You sell something, but you also need to recruit other people to sell things, because then you'll get a small percentage of what they get.
Right.
And then they'll get other people. And if you've ever heard of that stuff, that should not be how the church is working.
Absolutely not.
That is not a slight bit of inappropriate, but a large amount of inappropriate. And it's happening globally now.
Well, and then you pair that with the seeker-driven model that they're using. So not only are they banking on however many churches that come out of your church, but they're using the seeker-driven model to bring people into their church. So they are not actually converting full converts. They are converting goats. They're converting people who don't really understand why we're Christians. They just know that it makes them feel good, that they're helping their community or that they're contributing to whatever project is in that season. I notice a lot of them are very irregular attenders.
Yeah,
you know, like you're seeing new faces just constantly circle through there. And it's because, honestly, I think a lot of actual Christians who end up coming to our church leave because they're like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I know that there's been a couple that I've talked to like that. Like, why didn't you ever come back? And they weren't like flat out. Now, in hindsight, I realized what they were saying. You know what I mean? Like,
now you know.
Because like I was in it and I was like, why aren't you at our church? Come back to us, you know? And they were always just like, oh, I just didn't like the style of preaching, or I didn't think that he used the Bible enough. And I'm just like, oh, it's okay. They just like to make it comparable to today's times. They just like to bring it to today. And, you know, but like looking back, I'm just like, oh,
that's what you meant.
They were saying that we're unbiblical.
Yes,
like,
that was a nice way of saying it. Yes, which is why you're doing this. So,
yes, absolutely.
You know, it would have been great if somebody had been like, hey, listen, actually, what it is that this is unbiblical. This is not in the Bible, what your husband did. That's not in the Bible. This is what the Bible actually says. Yeah. Doing what your husband did is actually way more helpful, because there are a couple of people leaving now. Yeah. And there will be more people leaving. The louder that you are, the louder that you refute false churches. Yeah. There is only one way to warn people, and you can either drown with the ship, or you can leave the ship and toss lifesavers to the people drowning from a safe distance, or you're going to go down with it. So what could somebody have said to be an encouragement to you during that? We have our spouses, right? But sometimes these folks don't have a spouse. Sometimes they actually are on their own. There's no one to say, hey, you're not crazy. I saw it too. Yeah. What can we do? How can we help people who are going through this?
I think that people need to hear stories like this. I think that people need to be involved in groups that are dedicated to helping people understand what exactly the Bible teaches, and to help them kind of unwrap. It's like an onion. It really is. Like, you're just peeling back.
I don't like onions. Can we say parfait?
Sure. Parfait. It's like
onion.
It's like a watermelon.
It's like a watermelon.
And there's all of these seeds.
Oh no, that was so brilliant that you disappeared. Wow. Wow.
You need people that understand where you've been. You need people that will talk you through these kind of like roller coaster emotions that you have. Because one day you're feeling like great, like you're feeling like I did the right thing. I know that this is wrong. This is good what I did. And the next day it's totally opposite. The next day you feel so much guilt, so much shame. I know I felt so much guilt and shame just because there's still people that attend there because I invited them to church on Sunday.
Right.
People that I encouraged to come back and they're still there because I kept encouraging them to come back and I kept, being so nice to them and keeping them there. I mean, it's a roller coaster and it's really heavy.
Yeah.
And they need people that understand that, and they need people to help them understand what Scripture says, and they need the gospel. They need the gospel preached to them more than any. Like, I know everybody needs it, but they desperately need the gospel, because if we're not constantly reminded, sometimes like you slip back into that feeling of like, I am unforgivable.
Right.
Like there's no way that God can accept me. Like, I'm shameful. We are, but that's why the gospel is so important. Like, that's why it's so good. And we need the gospel. We need it so bad.
Yep.
And we need to be in a church that is teaching sound doctrine. And I know that that's so hard. And I know that there are not very many out there. We finally found one. And it's wonderful and it's so refreshing, but it took a really long time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
so you're gonna have some trust issues, right?
You have a lot of trust issues. Like, I still sometimes, I still don't trust people fully. It's really weird that I trusted you right away, because I think it's because I watched you on the screen though for so long. And like, I like got to like see like how you reacted to different situations. And from that, I decided to like go for it. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I did, because you're wonderful, and like you do treat people with like the respect they need, instead of like you're like, you tell the truth, but like there's like the grace that comes with it. And if there's like anything that is like, it's like a salve to like a wound, like just like that grace is just like so nice. I see people sometimes who like will almost like laugh because like we'll say something because we don't know. Like, we don't really know yet.
Right.
Like, we're still trying to figure it out. And so, like, we'll ask a question and they'll kind of, like, give, like, a mocking answer to you.
Right, yes.
And,
that bothers me. Because, see, I went through nowhere near what you went through, but I was just as deceived, right? I was deceived by these false teachers. Joyce Meyer, Creflo Dollar. It was more that rather than, and that's far less painful. So if you can break up with the TV evangelists a lot easier than if you have your whole church family. But because I was deceived and because I had all those same questions, I don't want to see anybody else mocked the way that I was mocked, because I did get that response. And so now it drives me crazy. I'm like, you know, that you're actually pushing people further away from the good biblical truth that you could be sharing with them by being unkind for no reason. Because I guarantee you at some point somebody somewhere was just as dumb as I was when I was asking them questions. But if we some folks
talking about
and that's like nonstop, because the words that people use, they're so fancy and huge and confusing, and there's a lot of them, and like the study of words is fascinating to me. I like that. I find that really, really fun, until you get into words that are like 18 syllables long. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to research this word. Yeah, put away there. But I really am thankful that you were able to do this, that you came on, that you talked about this, that you shared what actually happened. Not because you want to gossip or because you want to out anybody. It would be wonderful if we lived in a world where this wasn't happening. But because there are people, you've had them reach out to you. I randomly had people reach out to me, and they didn't even know we were talking about this. Like, I had.
Isn't that crazy how that happens?
Folks reach out to me that not necessarily, I don't know, they may be in our church, I don't know, but telling me that, they were leaving. Even just in the comment sections, I've seen multiple people, or they're on the live list or just under other episodes, telling me they've just had this painful exit. And so all of that happens providentially right around the time where we're talking about this. And it was so concerning to me to see this amount of people that I've mentioned to you so many times. I keep saying there could be thousands of people out there going through this, and they don't know that there's thousands of people out there going through this.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to go through this. It's painful to talk about.
And I'm really, and like, I really appreciate that you had me on too, because like we were talking about, like you have a lot of people who are really knowledgeable about like Bethel and about like Elevation and about all these big churches. But what we don't see a lot of in like the world of like, let's show people deception,
Right.
is like these like ones that fly just under the radar. You know what I mean?
They're more dangerous. Bethel is what it is. We know what Bethel is.
Yeah.
These guys, they are capable of telling you the right gospel, but unwilling to teach it. And they are financially funded.
Yes.
Very well.
And they will savagely try to destroy you if you come against them.
They legitimately tried to do that.
Yeah.
I could not believe when you first told me about this that a evangelical church would do this, because I've studied the cults to almost an extent where I now wish that I had spent more time on this. I'd never heard of ARC before.
Yeah.
There are organizations out there designed to finance these churches and spread them, and all the while people are being hurt. Doctrine is being twisted. The gospel is not being shared. Goats are being fed. Sheep are being starved. And then when you finally say something for them to do this now to multiple people, so we know that it's not just that they just didn't like you because you're too pretty. Okay, well, we know that's not what it is, because they've done it to other people. So we can say for sure, this is actually their game plan.
Yeah.
The way to stop people from pushing back, that's cult-like behavior. That's not church-like behavior. So it's very dangerous because it is pervasive, just under the radar. This is why seeker-friendly nonsense should be just as pushed back against as any other false doctrine, because seeker-friendly is why this is getting away with what it's getting away with.
Right.
If you're a church or a family with 5 beautiful children, you want to have a good place to take them where they have cool stuff going on, where the kids are going to have fun things happen. That's how they get families in there.
That's one of their main tactics.
Yeah.
Is through the children. Yeah.
Because if your kids have friends in a church, you're going to be so much more likely to get up every Sunday and take your kids to see their friends. That's just the way that we are as parents. Like, okay, I disagree with some of the stuff, but is it really worth destroying my kids' friends and their relationships? That is a really scary tactic, because they have the money to make it look really cool.
Yes, they do.
And that's dangerous. So I'm really thankful that you were brave enough to do this. You guys, Kristin's old church could actually try to make things complicated for her. So make sure that you are paying close attention to where the ARC churches are in your town. I'm going to link to the ways that you can find them. And if we can make sure that this is as public as possible, they will not be capable of making it harder. That would be the last thing that we want. We're not here to poke the bear or anger any hornet's nests. We want to warn people about this, but more than anything, we want to show folks that are going through this that you're not alone, and that there is a way to get through it. And you have gotten through it now. You do have a church family, and you're going to have your own podcast. That's the real thing to do, you guys. Anything happens, what's my answer every single time? Podcast. You have to have a podcast. And just for the sake of everybody that's going to wonder, pineapple on pizza?
No, we must destroy it. It's the New World Order.
Yes, I'm sure that old church of yours actually loved pineapple on pizza.
It's at every party.
The ARC institution supports pineapple on pizza. Okay, I made that up. It's not in their stuff, but it seems like something they would do.
I think that this is something that needs to be addressed seriously. We need to take care of it, and you guys need to stop, because it's hurting Lauren.
It's hurting me. I cry. I don't really cry.
Do you not understand that the mark of the beast is actually
It's true. In all seriousness, you guys need to stop with pineapple on pizza. Okay, this is ridiculous. It's enough. But we're really excited about your upcoming podcast, because you have this tremendous voice. You're starting somewhere where a lot of people are starting.
Yes.
And so when you grow, it's one of the reasons why I started a blog. and eventually the podcast, because I was certain that there were people out there just as confused as I was by all these words. So I wanted to like really just, that's why originally it was called Biblical Beginnings.
Oh, okay.
And this was the beginning of me learning biblically and decompressing all the nonsense that I had learned.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to do that in a way where other people could glean from like my mistakes that I was making. And that's what you're going to be able to do with this wonderful podcast. You can talk about whatever you want, but your voice that you have is important because they want you to be quiet.
Right.
That's why they've done all the tactics. That's why all the manipulation, why all the threats, everything that's happening. It happens because they want us to be quiet. And the most dangerous thing that we can do is not warn people whenever they're being taught falsely. And also, if you don't let everybody else know what you're going through, they might think that they're the only ones going through it. So I'm excited about your podcast. I'm excited about these 2 episodes. I'm really thankful that you don't like pineapple on pizza because we had pizza tonight. We had pizza.
I did.
And I did not
delicious.
order pineapple.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, say it.
If there's anybody from my old church watching this for any reason, whether it's to spy on me or because you're genuinely curious, or I would love to speak to you if you have questions. I'm not a scary Grinch. Like I love you very much, and I just want to be here for you. So if you're watching this and you're from the church, just reach out to me because I'm not as scary as people want to make me seem.
Yeah, you're not. You're actually super sweetie. She's a super sweetie. If you guys are listening and you went to her church and you are not wanting to reach out to Kristin for purposes that maybe you might actually be being watched yourself, you can reach out to me too. And there are resources that I've included down below. And we're going to keep dealing with this. I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to just continue to research and dig into this. And so we're going to keep pushing back against this until the false teaching stops or I get called home.
Not stop.
Yes, that's right. For some reason, it makes me think of Father Abraham had many sons. Do you remember that? Like your right arm, left arm. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But that's really all we have for you, Humble Bees.
Okay.
As soon as Kristin's podcast is ready to drop, I'm just going to tell everybody all the time that this is happening, that this is a cool thing that we have because I'm very, very excited about it. Don't forget to check out Kristin's TikTok. If you are on TikTok, make sure that you follow her. I have linked to that below because TikTok is scary and she is rocking it over there. So she's sharing the gospel and she's getting a chance to talk to a lot of people that a lot of us can't reach because we're too afraid to get on TikTok. So reach out to Kristin on TikTok and social media, and do please check to see if your town has any of these churches. If you've been through this is something that you've experienced, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. And we would really love to hear about your story about what's happening to you, because we want to push back against this. And the best way to do that is to band together and let everybody know that it's not just one person, that this is happening to lots of people. Thanks for joining me, Kristin. I really appreciate this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. We love you, Humble Bees. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening, Humble Bees. This is Tulips and Honey. Over and out.
I think that diamond still needs a little more polish.
Yeah.
Weird.
So weird.
Boop. That is really weird. Wow. How weird is that? It disappears my whole body. And it'll be okay. Everything's going to be fine.
It'll be good.
It's going to be totally fine.
Keep saying that. I don't think it means what you think. What are you talking about? Don't swim in the
We're
water.
going to be here in the winter. We're not doing anything.
Start to grow gills.
I'll be a superhero.
Magic superhero because he disappeared too.
And when you laugh, you disappear. This is going to be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
There will be no
It'll be
laughter in this episode. Okay.
This is very serious.
Yes.
Me leaving.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I'm going to put that on silent. No, sir.
No, thank you.
He barked at
He
you.
did bark at me. He wanted my attention. I feel your nose. I love you.
Can I put that in the bloopers? I feel your nose and I love you. But go away.
Okay, we can fast forward.
So that's my fast forward sound.
That's a good fast forward sound. I like that.